For the next 30 minutes, you are going to hear your mother's voice inside your head. Not as a memory, not as a feeling. Her actual voice, the exact pitch, the exact cadence, the exact tone she used when she meant it. Because there are certain phrases burned into every kid who grew up in 1970s America. Phrases so embedded in our neural wiring that 45 years later they still stop us cold. We hear them in the grocery store when some other mother uses the exact same inflection our mother used. And for half a second, we're 7 years old again, standing in the kitchen in our pajamas, trying to decide whether to cry or run. These are 25 things every 1970s mom said to her kids, and every one of them would get her canceled, reported, filmed, and dragged across the internet in 2026. But in 1976, they were just Tuesday. They were how you were raised. They were the soundtrack of your entire childhood. And the strangest part isn't that she said them. The strangest part is how much you miss hearing them. Number 1. Because I said so. There was no argument that survived this sentence. You could be 7 years old and have the most airtight logical case ever constructed by a child. You could cross-examine like a Harvard law professor, and your mother would stand at the kitchen counter drying a plate with a dish towel and deliver it flat, without even looking up. Because I said so. 4 words. That was it. The conversation was over. Any further argument would be interpreted as disrespect, and disrespect was punished. You learned very young that the logic of the universe did not apply in your own house. Your mother was the logic. Your mother was the law. Today, a parenting book would call this authoritarian and emotionally harmful. In 1974, it was called being the mom. Number 2. Wait till your father gets home. This one was delayed violence. Your mother caught you doing something, anything, breaking a lamp or talking back or sneaking a fudgsicle before dinner, and she didn't even have to raise her voice. She just said it, quiet, flat, final. And then she turned back to what she was doing. And you were ruined for the next 4 hours because your father worked until 6. It was 2 in the afternoon. You had 4 entire hours to think about what was going to happen when that Buick pulled into the driveway. Every creak of the house sounded like the garage door. Every siren in the distance sounded like doom. You didn't eat. You didn't play. You just sat on your bed and waited for the slow, tired footsteps of a man who had worked 10 hours at the plant and now had to discipline a child. That anticipation was the punishment. Your mother knew it. Number 3. I'm not paying to heat the outside. You were 9 years old. You opened the front door to run out and tell your friend something. You left the door open for approximately 4 seconds. And from somewhere in the depths of the house, a voice would erupt like the wrath of God. Were you born in a barn? Close the door. I am not paying to heat the outside. You slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. You didn't even remember what you were going to tell your friend. The heating bill was sacred. The heating bill was a religion. Your mother knew to the penny what it cost to keep that house at 68 degrees. And every open door was an assault on the family economy. You grew up terrified of wasting heat, wasting water, wasting anything. Today, your own kids leave the back door open in February, and you hear your mother's voice come out of your own mouth. Every single time. Number 4. Go play outside. This was not a suggestion. This was an eviction notice. It was 9 in the morning on a Saturday. You were on the living room floor watching Scooby-Doo. Your mother walked in with a vacuum cleaner, looked at you, and delivered the sentence, "Go, play, outside." That was it. You had 30 seconds to find your sneakers and get out. No, you could not watch the rest of the show. No, it was not too cold. No, she did not care what you did. She needed the house to herself, and you needed fresh air, and those 2 things were going to be solved by the same solution. You ended up in your backyard with nothing to do. You threw a stick at a tree for an hour. You built a fort out of lawn furniture. You lay in the grass and watched the clouds. By the time you were allowed back in at lunchtime, you had lived an entire second childhood in your own yard, and you didn't even know it was supposed to be boring. Number 5. Do you think money grows on trees? You wanted something. A wacky pack, a pack of baseball cards, a stupid 30-cent candy bar at the counter of the 7-Eleven. And your mother, standing in line with her Winston Lights and her Wonder Bread, would look down at you and say it, slow and disgusted. Do you think money grows On trees? The answer was clearly no. Money did not grow on trees. Money came from your father working himself to death at the factory. Money was sacred. Money was finite. Money was never to be spent on candy at the checkout counter, which apparently was the single greatest financial mistake a 7-year-old could make. You put the candy back. You learned early that every dollar had a cost that someone had already paid. If this is hitting home, hit that subscribe button. This whole channel is made the same way your parents raised you, with time, with effort, and without expecting anything in return, except that you stick around. We also have a Facebook community where thousands of 70s kids are trading these exact memories every single day. Come find us, you're going to want to. Number 6, clean your plate. There are starving kids in Africa. Your mother had made a casserole. You didn't know what was in it. You suspected cream of mushroom soup and something green. It looked like wet carpet, and she put a full portion of it on your plate at 6 in the evening. And she said, "Eat." You said, "I'm not hungry." She said, "Clean your plate." You said, "I don't like it." And then came the sentence. Do you know there are starving kids in Africa who would love to have that food? You could not understand the logic. How did your eating this casserole help anyone in Africa? If you didn't eat it, could we mail it to them? No. You just had to eat it and feel guilty and understand that somewhere, vaguely across the ocean, children were hungry, and this was somehow your fault. You ate. You felt guilty. The casserole was cold by the time you finished, and you carried that guilt for 45 years. Number 7, you'll put your eye out. Every single thing you ever did as a child was going to put your eye out. Running with scissors, throwing a rock, shooting a rubber band, sword fighting with sticks, riding a bike too fast, opening an umbrella, indoors. Your mother had a specific anatomical obsession with the vulnerability of the human eye, and she lived in absolute certainty that you were one small mistake away from permanent monocular vision. You'll put your eye out, she'd say, from 3 rooms away, without even looking at what you were doing. She didn't need to look. She knew. You'd walk outside with a sharpened pencil, and she'd say it. You'd point a BB gun at your brother, and she'd say it. You'd throw popcorn at the TV, and somehow she'd say it. Nobody ever actually put their eye out. But everyone knew someone who knew someone whose cousin did. That was enough. Number 8, walk it off. You had fallen off your bike. You had scraped the entire outer layer of skin off your kneecap. Blood was running down your shin into your sock. You came into the kitchen crying, presenting the wound, expecting sympathy, expecting iodine, expecting possibly a trip to the emergency room. And your mother looked at your knee, looked at your face, and said, "Walk it off." That was it. Walk it off. She didn't mean it figuratively. She meant, literally, go walk around until the pain stops. Put some water on it. Don't bleed on the carpet. And somehow, unbelievably, it worked. You walked it off. You went back outside. You rode the bike again. By evening, you had forgotten about the knee entirely. That sentence built an entire generation of people who still don't go to the doctor for anything short of a severed limb. And we're proud of it. Number 9, don't make me pull this car over. You were in the back of the station wagon with your brother. You had been fighting for approximately 11 miles. You were punching each other in the leg. You were doing it silently, carefully, trying not to get caught. And your mother's eyes in the rearview mirror were narrowing. And then came the warning. She didn't yell. That was the terrifying part. She said it flat, measured, calm. Don't make me pull this car over. It was a nuclear warning. Because if she pulled the car over, it was over. Pulling the car over meant spanking on the side of the interstate in full view of passing motorists. Pulling the car over meant everyone's vacation got canceled. Pulling the car over meant the world ended. So you stopped. You sat on opposite sides of the bench seat. You looked out the windows. You didn't speak for the next 40 minutes. And no car was ever pulled over, because no car ever needed to be. The threat was the discipline. Number 10, don't make me come back there. If you were home, the equivalent was this. You were in your bedroom. You were fighting with your sister. You were doing it at volume. And from the kitchen, 2 rooms away, came the warning. Don't make me come back there. You stopped immediately because you knew what coming back there meant. Coming back there meant she'd put down whatever she was doing. Coming back there meant she'd abandoned her cigarette in the ashtray. Coming back there meant she was going to walk in a specific way, with a specific pace, down the hallway toward your bedroom. And when she arrived, the consequences would be disproportionate to the crime. So you stopped. You whispered for the rest of the afternoon. You learned to settle conflicts with your siblings silently, diplomatically, under threat of maternal warfare. Your generation is famous for its conflict resolution skills. You developed them at age 7. Number 11. Go ask your father. You wanted something. You asked your mother. Your mother was folding laundry on the couch while half watching The Price is Right. She didn't want to deal with it. She had already decided, 30 years earlier, that certain categories of decision belonged to your father, and today was one of those days. Go, ask your father, which was confusing because your father was napping. Your father was always napping on Sundays. He worked 6 days a week and he slept on the 7th. Waking him up was a capital offense. You had to make a choice. Wake him and face his wrath, or don't wake him and forfeit whatever you were asking for. It was a perfect parenting trap. You usually chose to forfeit. And you understood early that your parents were a team, and the team's strategy was to delay every decision until you gave up on wanting anything in the first place. Number 12. When I was your age, you had complained about anything, about homework, about chores, about the weather, about what was for dinner, and your mother stopped what she was doing, looked at you, and began the opening monologue. When I was your age. What followed was a story. Sometimes it was about walking 5 miles to school in the snow, uphill, both ways. Sometimes about sharing 1 pair of shoes with 3 siblings. Sometimes about working in her father's store at age 8 for no pay. The stories were always grimmer than your complaint. They were designed to make you feel like a soft, coddled, ungrateful child. And they worked. You stopped complaining. You ate your lima beans. You shoveled the walk. Because somewhere in 1941, apparently, your mother had suffered worse. Number 13. I'll give you something to cry about. You were crying. It didn't matter why. Maybe your brother had hit you. Maybe you'd skinned your elbow. Maybe your feelings were hurt because someone at school had called you a name, and you came to your mother for comfort, and instead of comfort, she delivered the most feared sentence in the Midwestern parental arsenal. Keep crying. I will give you something to cry about. It was a threat of escalation. Your current crying, she was saying, was insufficient. Your current crying was nothing. If you kept it up, she would personally provide a reason for real crying, and then you would know the difference. You learned to stop. You wiped your face. You swallowed whatever was in your throat. And for the rest of your life, you have had difficulty crying in front of anyone, ever, for any reason. That one sentence, that one threat, it stayed. For decades. Number 14. Children should be seen and not heard. You were in the living room. Your mother was on the phone with your aunt. You were trying to tell her something urgent, something a 9-year-old considered urgent, which was roughly equivalent to nothing. And she covered the receiver, looked at you and said it. Children should be seen and not heard. Then she went back to her phone call. You stood there. You wanted to protest. You wanted to say, but I have something to tell you. You didn't, because the rule was clear. You were a child. Your opinions were not relevant. Your observations were not important. Your interruptions were rude. You could be in the room. You could not speak in the room. Adult conversations were sacred, and you were to stand quietly until they concluded. Every kid in the 1970s knew this rule without ever being taught it. You just absorbed it, from birth, from the air. Number 15. I'm going to count to 3. This was the warning before the warning. You were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, and your mother, from somewhere else in the house, would announce the counting. 1. You froze. 2. You had approximately 3 seconds to stop whatever you were doing, put it back, and pretend you hadn't done it. 3. If she got to 3, something was going to happen, and you didn't want to find out what. Usually she didn't get to 3. She got to 2.5, 2 3/4. She stretched the interval between 2 and 3 to give you maximum opportunity to comply. And you did. You always did. The weird part is that as an adult, if you hear someone count to 3 in that exact cadence, you still freeze for a half second. That tone is in your bone marrow. You will never be free of it. Number 16. Take your elbows off the table. You were eating. Not doing anything wrong, just eating. Your elbows were resting naturally on the table because that's what hands do at tables. And your mother would stop mid-bite, point her fork at your forearms, and say it. Take your elbows off the table. There was no explanation. There was no reasoning. Elbows on the table were rude, according to a standard that had been established by an aristocracy that had died 2 centuries ago, and yet was still being enforced in a ranch house in Ohio in 1976. You moved your elbows. You sat with your hands folded in your lap, and you grew up to be an adult who still, to this day, when eating at a nice restaurant, pulls your elbows off the table before the salad arrives without thinking about it. Some programming is permanent. Number 17. Hay is for horses. You had said the word yeah. Just yeah. A casual, American, 3-letter affirmative, universally used in every context except the one you were currently in, which was answering your mother. And she looked at you, deadly serious, and delivered the sentence that every 1970s kid heard so many times it became a reflex. Hay is for horses. You were supposed to say yes. Yes, Mom. Yes, ma'am. In some households, yeah was for people who grew up in barns, raised by farm animals, destined to become truckers or worse. Yeah was the first step on the slippery slope to being a disappointment. You corrected yourself. Yes, Mom. And for the rest of your life, when you hear someone's kid say yeah to their mother, a tiny alarm goes off in your head. That's wrong, the alarm says. Somebody should say something. Number 18. Don't you take that tone with me. You hadn't said anything wrong. You had said something correct, but with slight emphasis. A small sigh, a particular tilt of the voice, a fractional eye roll that you didn't even know you were doing. And your mother, who had a radar for tone that could detect a bad attitude at 50 paces, locked on to it. Don't you take that tone with me. You had no idea what tone. You hadn't even heard it. But apparently it had been there, and apparently it was punishable. You learned to speak to your mother in a voice completely devoid of inflection, like a hostage reading a ransom note. Flat, respectful, emotion-free. It was the only way to survive a conversation without getting blindsided by a tone you didn't know you had. Number 19. If your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? You wanted to do something everyone was doing. Everyone had tough skins. Everyone was allowed to watch the $6 Million Man. Everyone was going to Tommy's slumber party. And you said the magic words, "But Mom, everyone's doing it." And she stopped. She turned. She delivered the Socratic question that has destroyed the arguments of children for generations. If your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Checkmate. There was no answer. The logic was unassailable. Just because other people did something didn't mean you should do it too. You were supposed to be an individual. You were supposed to think for yourself. Specifically, you were supposed to think for yourself in exactly the way your mother had already thought for you. This was called independent thinking. You were not fooled. Number 20. That's it. You're grounded. You had pushed it too far. You had come home late. You had talked back. You had been caught. And your mother delivered the ultimate punishment, the one that would remove you from circulation for an unspecified period of time. That's it. You're grounded. Grounded meant no going outside. Grounded meant no friends over. Grounded meant school, home, room. That was your entire universe. No phone, no TV, usually, no bike. Just you, your bedroom, a stack of library books, and the ceiling you'd stare at for 3 weeks, memorizing every crack. I was grounded for the entire second week of July, 1978. I still remember the exact wallpaper pattern I stared at. I still remember the specific sound of other kids on bikes outside, laughing, free, while I sat on my bed reading a book about sharks for the 4th time. Tell me about the worst grounding of your childhood. What did you do to deserve it? How long was the sentence? Did your mom actually hold the line? Or did she cave after 3 days? Type it exactly the way you remember it. I am reading every single one. Everyone. Number 21. Because life isn't fair, that's why. You had complained about fairness. Maybe your sister got a bigger piece of cake. Maybe your brother didn't have to do the dishes. Maybe you had to go to bed earlier than your friend. And you said the fatal phrase, "But it's not fair." Your mother stopped whatever she was doing. She looked at you with the expression of a woman who had been waiting 40 years to deliver this lesson. Because life isn't fair. That's why. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of the universe, delivered by a woman folding towels. Life wasn't fair. Get used to it. The sooner you understood that, the sooner you'd stop whining about it. And she was right. She was so right it took you 30 years to realize how right she was. Life really isn't fair, and nobody will ever tell you as plainly as she did. Number 22. I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it. This was the nuclear option. The ultimate maternal threat. Whatever you had done, it had crossed a line so severe that your mother was now threatening to end the existence she had given you. I brought you into this world, and I can take you out. You didn't really believe her. Mostly. But there was a small, primal part of your brain that processed the threat as literal, because she was your mother, and she had in fact brought you into the world, and therefore reverse engineering was at least theoretically possible. You complied. You apologized. You never figured out exactly what she meant legally, but you figured out what she meant emotionally, and that was enough. No judge would have sentenced her, but she had the power. You understood that power, even at age 8. Number 23. Someday you'll have children of your own. This was the slow motion curse. You were being difficult. You were talking back. You were being, in your mother's specific terminology, impossible. And she stopped, looked at you with an expression that was half exhausted and half amused, and invoked the ancient hex. Someday, you'll have children of your own. Then you'll understand it wasn't a threat. It was a prophecy. It was the transfer of a generational curse from mother to child, the same words her mother had said to her in 1948. Someday you'll have a child exactly like you. Someday that child will do to you exactly what you're doing to me right now. Someday you'll stand in a kitchen with a dish towel over your shoulder and hear your own voice coming out of your own mouth, saying this exact sentence, and you'll understand. And if you have kids, you know, she was right. She was so right. Number 24. You're going to sit at that table until you finish it. You were 7 years old. You had refused to eat the lima beans. You had crossed your arms. You had pushed your plate away. And your mother, who had been preparing for this exact confrontation since the day you were born, calmly said the sentence that would define your entire evening. You are going to sit at that table until you finish it. It was 8 p.m. The rest of the family had left. The TV was on in the other room. You could hear your siblings watching Happy Days without you. And you sat, with a congealed pile of cold lima beans on a plate in front of you, for 2 hours. You eventually ate them at 10:30, sobbing, while your mother did the dishes and pretended not to notice. You went to bed with a stomach full of cold beans and the understanding that your mother would, in fact, break your will before you broke hers. She was made of iron. She was undefeated, and you respected her, even then. Number 25. You'll understand when you're older. This was the sentence you heard the most, and it was the sentence that infuriated you the most. You would ask a question. Why do we have to go to Aunt Helen's every Sunday? Why can't we afford a vacation like the Petersons? Why is Daddy so tired all the time? And your mother, instead of answering, would look at you with this soft, sad smile, and she'd say it. You'll understand when you're older. At the time, you hated it. You wanted answers, not prophecies. You wanted to know things, not be told you weren't ready. But here's the thing. You're older now. You're the age she was then. You have a mortgage and a job and knees that hurt and a kid who talks back and a father-in-law you visit out of duty and a schedule that's too full and a savings account that's too small. And somewhere in the last 5 years you've stopped asking why, because you already know why. You look at old photos of her, standing in that kitchen, making that dinner, folding those towels, repeating those same sentences over and over, and you finally understand. You understand why she was tired. You understand why she said no. You understand why she counted to 3 and threatened your existence and told you life wasn't fair. You understand all of it, And you'd give anything, anything, to hear her say just one of those sentences again. Just one more time. She was right. She was always right. You just had to get old enough to know it. So those are the 25 sentences that raised a generation, 25 phrases that would get our mothers canceled, reported, ratioed on every social media platform if they said them today in public. Phrases that are called toxic now, authoritarian, emotionally harmful. And maybe they were. But they also raised a generation of people who can handle a scraped knee without calling an ambulance, who can sit through a boring dinner without an iPad, who can lose a game without getting a participation trophy, and who can hear a difficult truth without falling apart. We weren't coddled. We weren't validated. We weren't asked how we felt about everything. We were told to clean our plates and walk it off and close the door and stop crying. And somewhere along the way, we grew up. Not perfect, not unscarred, but capable, resilient, able to raise our own children, even if we raised them softer than she raised us. Because we know now what it cost her. We know what those sentences meant. We know that behind every sharp word was a woman who was exhausted and scared, and doing her best with what she had. And we miss her. God, do we miss her? If that hit you somewhere deep, you know what to do. Subscribe. Share it with the one person who'd understand, and I'll see you next time.